I'm so excited to finally get to the specialty stitches of the Pfaff Creative Icon. We're in menu 8.4, where stacking stitches are next. And you'll notice they're kind of paired up, so keep that in mind as we start. And I'm going to do these with two different thread colors for a little extra oomph. And when you are unsure what you're doing, remember you can touch the question mark and touch your stitch, and it will remind you what that stitch was meant to be. First, sew the first stitch and then sew the second, overlapping the first. Be sure to use the same starting point for each stitch. That is the key, and that's actually all you need to know. Now, once you start stitching these out, and I hope you'll do that as you're creating your stitch book, which that is information you can find below this YouTube video, is that you will find that all the stitches in your machine could technically be turned into some sort of stacked stitch. One decorative stitch from one menu combined with a decorative stitch from another menu could be easily stacked to create something new. Again, mix up the colors or even stack 2 to 3 stitches together. I can't wait to see what combinations you come up with. And that is something that we talk about a lot in our Pfaff Stitching Cosmos online course, is taking an idea and then running with it. So yes, this is just a starting point. You're going to notice that there's quite a few stitches in here, a total of 30, each of them paired up with a fun partner. Each of those partners are meant to be about the same size, perfect for each other. So as you stitch the first one, and that is true, usually the first one is you should do the first one first, and then the second one is meant to float on top of it. So let's go ahead and get to our fabric, and I'll show you how it's stitched. Keeping in mind we have foot 8 on, and we have stabilizer behind our fabric. So we were already playing with some of the radiant stitches, and so that we were playing around, and not saying they all have to radiate the same way. You can radiate them opposite ways as well. We've got some variegated thread on, but I want to make sure that I'm starting right on that line. And how do you know when that foot's so far up? Here's a little trick. Touch the button that sets your foot down to the fabric. Now touch it again and watch the foot. It will pop up just enough. See how it's just barely above the fabric? But trust me, it's just far enough that I can now see that my needle's going to come down. I have now a red line on the foot that I can follow. And I'm going to utilize the start-stop button on the front of the machine just to go ahead and get started with this stitch. Now you're noticing immediately that this stitch is sewing sideways. That's why we have foot 8 on. Any stitch that sews sideways will require that. And what I'm doing is really just, and I'm just kind of hovering my fingers here, is just keeping the foot fairly parallel to that line as it travels down. It's super fun. So as you can see, we know exactly where it started. So when we get to that second group of, the second pair of the stitch, we're going to make sure that we start right on that same point. Okay, so I touched the scissor button just so I'd finish the stitch, and lock and cut it for me. That's super fun. All right, now we can see that we can choose our second pair, and I think I'm going to actually change threads so you really can see the difference when you combine two different colors. So this would be a perfect place to actually turn your needle down so you can actually see that it's coming into the exact starting hole of the stitch from the first row. Let's just go ahead and start it. I've got just some pink thread I've added in, so it'll definitely show. It's kind of a heart that is stitched over the top of it. Still make sure that your foot stays parallel to the line that you drew. That will definitely help. Trust me, lines are important with this type of work. Otherwise you start to drift and you don't even know you're drifting. So here we go. That looks fun. And we'll just let that heart kind of finish off, even though there's not stitches underneath it. Kind of gives you an idea of where your patterns start and stop. Look how right on that line I have finished up on. Super fun to see. Look how those two are meant to be stitched together. So I hope you'll check out our links below this YouTube video about our Pfaff Stitching Cosmos course and see what potential your machine has for even more creativity.